Hey, welcome to episode 6 of Space Problems. This is Ben.
And this is Derek.
We're going to talk today about Alien Covenant and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Woo.
But first, let's talk about the Star Trek Discovery trailer. Derek, I'm going to pass that one off to you.
Ooh, I'm not sure you want to do that. But okay.
Please enlighten.
So, all right. I'm just going to be honest. I did not enjoy it, which is a real bummer because I know, it might sound like I'm kind of rooting for this one to fail, but I'm not. I'm genuinely not. I really, really want another Star Trek. I miss Star Trek. I miss, the Next Generation and the original and even Deep Space Nine. I mean, they were all really good. I just can't. I'm sorry. I feel like I gotta kind of call them like I see them. And this one just looks awful. And it's not an aesthetic thing. It looks polished. It looks much more high budget than a TV show of this nature would. I mean, honestly, it looks on par with the Kelvin Star Trek movies, the new ones with Christopher Pine. Mm-hmm. As far as quality goes, now, from a production side, I can respect that. Like, that's clearly a lot of hard work went into this. But I have a huge problem with it because, one, why on earth does it look like the Kelvin ones? That makes no sense. It doesn't fit with anything. They made a big stink at the beginning that this was going to take place in the Prime timeline. That's the original Star Trek timeline. So this is supposed to take place before Shatner's Star Trek, before the original series with Kirk and Spock, which Enterprise did with debatable success, depending on who you talk to. But I don't mind. I mean, I think Enterprise did a pretty decent job of trying to make things look retro while at the same time trying to make them look more, realistic, modernish, less cardboard and bright colors.
Sure.
I'm a little forgiving of going that direction a little bit. But the great thing about Enterprise was Enterprise still had elements that looked like they led to things you saw in Star Trek. Even little things, like, for instance, in the original Star Trek, they used to have these wall dividers that had, like, a lot of holes in them, and they were kind of, like, golden. I don't know how to describe those. But in Enterprise, they had similar ones with, like, larger holes that were just, like, kind of gray. Like, little touches like that, like, little things that kind of callbacks. I don't see any of that in this. I genuinely don't. I just see something that looks super, super modern. Lens flares everywhere. It just reeks of J.J. Abrams' shooting style, including the big Dutch angles and the big camera pans. And a lot of people have suggested that it looks more like Star Wars than Star Trek.
So they are trying to rip off J.J. Abrams, is basically what you're saying.
Basically. Now, I mean, I would see that from that opening scene where they're in the desert for some reason. I still don't get that scene. I still really don't understand that. It's like, so you and your captain are just walking through the desert, just hanging out, because she's complaining, like, Captain, I don't know if we know where we're going. And the captain's just like, hey, let's talk about your career. And I'm thinking, you're wandering around in the desert of a strange planet, but yeah, sure, that seems like the time to do that.
Exposition.
It's like awkward exposition. And then she's like, maybe it's time we talked about you getting your own command. And then the ship comes through the clouds, and there's this big dramatic moment, and then they would beam them up. And I was like, so did you beam to the surface of the planet just to have that little conversation? I mean, like I said, I'm not going to try to nitpick that too much because, it might make sense in context.
Yeah, it might be out of context. Yeah.
Yeah, so sure. But there's just so many moments in the trailer that were so cringeworthy to me that just felt so forced and so weird and so random. Like the one that kills me is the one where that one new alien species was just like, my species, like, purpose is to detect death. I detect death now. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Your entire species, that's their purpose. I don't even know where to start with that. Like, first of all, most depressing species ever. like is this like a superpower? Like, what is this? Like, do you have a death sense? Is your death sense tingling? Like, I don't even know where to start with that. I just remember, like, having this huge eye roll. And their costumes there's no color distinction between any of them. I mean, they all have the same uniform, which is really weird because in Star Trek, there's always a color distinction, however small. I mean, even on the most, uniform of uniforms they've ever had on the series, there was at least some sort of accent color that, indicated command or engineering or, medical or something. And I also really got this weird vibe from the trailer that she was, the main character is somehow half Vulcan. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but that would fly in the face of Star Trek canon. I mean, a lot of people have pointed out that there's a lot of details here that already seem to fly in the face of Star Trek canon. But the biggest one being, of course, she can't be half Vulcan because Spock is the first Vulcan or half Vulcan in Star Trek, in Starfleet. Like, they've made a big, big deal several times in Star Trek that Spock is the first Vulcan of any kind to be in Starfleet.
Are they going to try to pull this where, but we didn't know about her or something?
I don't know.
I mean, which wouldn't make any sense anyways, but...
Well, and apparently Sarek is, because Sarek is in it, which is Spock's dad.
Right, which we discussed in a previous episode.
But apparently he's going to be a big, big character in this. Like, they saw a lot of shots with him. And I don't know about that. Because what I've seen so far doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm trying really hard to be hopeful, but from everything I've seen so far, it really seems like it's gone off the rails. It really seems like they've gone back on promises. No part of this really looks or feels like Star Trek. So
you feel, since this is a prequel, you feel like they're like kind of ruining the origin of Star Trek?
I mean, it's not even about ruining it. It's like
not to put harsh sound on it or anything.
No, I don't think it's a ruining thing. It's just. To me, this is one of those things where I feel like this is just going to be one of those shows that we all just kind of ignore in continuity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every now and then they try to do a spin-off and we all just kind of pretend it didn't happen. Like the thing with Joey.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a fresh wound for you. I know how much you love Friends.
No, because, I do, but not Joey.
Okay.
That was just it's like taking the worst character of a show, not that he wasn't a good character in Friends, but then taking it'd be like in Family Guy making a show called Quagmire.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be very deep.
Well,
by any means.
Yeah, some characters are meant to be side characters, unless you can truly bring something new to the whole dynamic. Which I will applaud them. I think Frasier did the best job of any spinoff ever, because they took someone who probably was on the surface very one-dimensional and actually really rounded him out. But a lot of the success of that show was more with supporting cast. So
my favorite spinoff show would probably be Boston Legal. It was a spinoff of The Practice, and Boston Legal actually had William Shatner in it.
Oh, I remember that. Didn't watch it, but
fantastic show.
So anyway, I don't have a final verdict. I won't until I actually watch it.
It's probably going to be a one and done, like one season. That's the vibe I might get from it. Like it might go the way of other space.
Well, especially because
it's going to be only on CBS Access.
Yeah, I was about to say,
online app.
That was what I was going to point out. Like the CBS thing makes me not want to even try it in the first place because I'm not going to pay for that just for that.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I know what CBS is trying to do, but because of Hulu and because of Netflix, I can't bring myself to spend as much for a subscription for a single channel's content versus services that provide that from a multitude of networks. Especially CBS, I just don't really have that much from them that I'm really that interested in.
No, I don't blame you.
But I will point out one thing that's sort of it's been pointed out by several other Star Trek fans, but I think it should be the new show from Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane. The Orville, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. The new kind of parody Star Trek show that he's going to have on Fox. I believe it's Fox. I'm not sure.
I mean, knowing Seth MacFarlane, it probably is Fox.
I gotta say, I watched the trailer for that, and I have to agree with a lot of my fellow Trekkies. I'm actually more excited for that than I am this Star Trek. Star Trek Discovery. Because that actually feels more in the spirit, even in the visual tone, even in the way, like to me, I look at screenshots of that and I'm like, that's actually the way Star Trek should look. And that's sad. If Seth MacFarlane can get it right, what are you doing? I mean, seriously, what are you doing?
Well, Seth MacFarlane has always been good at taking something popular and ripping it off and making it his own.
True.
So, Simpsons, Family Guy. So
Yeah.
Speaking of, because I was a big fan of Other Space, and I know you've watched Other Space.
I actually
as well,
really
and
enjoyed
I
that.
wish there would be another. Yeah, I wish there'd be another season of it. It just didn't get anything worth of advertising, and it's on the weirdest channel, the Yahoo.
Oh, it was on Yahoo. Yeah, well, they've
Video.
since discontinued that, haven't they? Like, I thought they canned that.
The last I heard, Paul Feig sent out a tweet and said, "Watch the shit out of season 1," and in hopes that he will get funding for a season 2, because he's basically been kicked out of Sony because of Dan Aykroyd recently spoke very scathingly of Paul Feig and the Ghostbusters reboot. So he may be pushing for another Other Space. I don't know.
Well,
But I would like to see it.
I mean, I'd be down for that. I'm not a hardcore fan of Other Space. There's parts of it I wasn't crazy about, but overall, I mean, it's actually a really enjoyable, more unique sci-fi show. I mean, it was nice to see something that's like a newer take, that's a different direction. I thought they did a good job.
Sure. I think they just didn't find their footing yet.
Right.
I mean, it was a very rough first season, and every episode I think got better, and they were starting to find their grounding, and by the time it was good, it was over, and then that's all we got.
Right, and that's true of a lot of shows. I mean, I know in the era of streaming and binge watching, there's a lot of pressure now to have the first season perform perfectly right out the gate. But if you look at some of the best shows in history, a lot of them really spend the first at least season, maybe 2 seasons, finding their footing. Star Trek Next Generation is a perfect example of that. The first season of Next Generation is just so different from all the rest. It definitely took them a good season and a half to kind of get their groove, which, makes a lot of sense after watching a documentary like Chaos on the Bridge and learning more about what was going on behind the scenes. Which, if you haven't checked that out, I think it should still be on Netflix. It is worth a watch. It's very entertaining. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have anything on Discovery? I mean, are you just kind of meh on the whole thing?
Well, when I saw the trailer for Star Trek Discovery, of course, I'm not huge or as big into Star Trek as you are. So when it comes to continuity, I'm not as well informed. But visually, I was like, well, okay, they're making it look like the recent Star Trek films, but that's the only thing I could really say about it. But yeah, I agree that it did kind of look like they were trying to rip off J.J. Abrams, and it seems like, from what you described, they really don't care about continuity.
It really doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange because, if you really know your audience even a little, like if there's one fan group that cares just a little more than most about continuity. Like, I love my fellow Star Trek fans. I really do. But, I mean, the amount of fanaticism I have seen go into tracking timelines and assigning star dates to specific times and events and, and even drawing up blueprints for specifics of how the ships work, it's almost unparalleled.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of fucking up continuity...
That's
perfect transition.
Probably the best segue I've ever heard.
Yeah, perfect segue. Let's talk about Alien Covenant.
Can we not and say we did?
Well, no, because I've been looking forward to an episode where I finally get to bitch and rant, and not just talk about all the positive things and little minor things that I like, but. I'm going to watch it again. I've seen it in the theater, but I'm going to give it another watch because obviously you're not going to catch everything in the first time around, and it's who knows.
I feel like I need to settle in. Should I get some popcorn?
If you want. I mean, we can pause the.
No.
I can always cut this out.
No, it's okay. I just
make sure you got your popcorn.
No, I'm good. I just feel like this is going to be good.
Oh well. I mean, it starts with even this. I met a friend, a colleague from work, at the theater, and he lives a little out of town than me. But I live. We went to the theater in the town that I live in, and I walked to the theater. He drove, but as he got there before me, and as I was walking, I realized half of my town's under construction, and I got to the sidewalk, and every part that I could possibly get to it was closed off, and it would have taken me another 15 to 20 minutes to go around, and I would have not made it in time. So I hopped the fence.
Okay.
And I'm going through construction zones and dirt and climbing, 10-foot fences. So this is the effort that I put into Alien Covenant. So imagine my disappointment.
Well, I know how much we've talked about the Alien franchise before, so I'm pretty sure I can imagine your disappointment just from that.
I originally left the theater thinking that it was slightly better than Prometheus.
Okay.
But, however, my theater serves beer, and I was about 3 in.
Good theater.
Yeah. It makes bad movies, I guess, to deal with a little bit. But yeah, after sobering up, the nostalgia wore off, and all of the problems started to kind of trickle into my brain. Because, when you leave a theater on something like that, you start off with kind of maybe a nostalgia high.
Sure. I think that right there, what you just described, the nostalgia high, I think that's the reason we have such a problem with all the reboots and remakes right now. That's a very good way of putting it, a nostalgia high. Because it's amazing how many people I meet that, walking out of a theater and when they watch one of these really bad reboots, remakes, they're like, yeah, that wasn't that bad. And then like a week later, they're like, oh my God, that was such garbage. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's
I've been that person many a times. And let me first pay the film a compliment.
Okay.
As it's one of my few. It ignores the AVP.
True.
AVP put Xenos on Earth, like kind of in modern day.
To be fair, and this is just me giving credit where credit is due, it was made very clear at the time of Alien vs. Predator that this was not part of continuity. They did make that point when the movies came out. When the original AVP came out, they did specify that this was supposed to be outside continuity both.
Okay, you're only proving my point to the compliment. It's not a good compliment.
I'm just...
but it's a compliment.
I'm just pointing it out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right, so we're just going to go into spoiler alerts for anybody.
Yeah.
So whatever. Like I was saying, I was 3 beers in after the movie, and at the time, I put the film just above Prometheus due to nostalgia and actually seeing Xenos again,
Well, to be fair, the bar for Prometheus is also extremely low. So
okay, I like Prometheus.
I don't.
It has it has its problems. It has. I will.
It
agree
has
with
many.
you on this, but yeah. Well, that's I pluraled that problem.
Okay. All right.
But at least with that, it was headed in a different direction than
that's true.
Alien.
I will give it that.
Because
it was more angling itself to deal with the engineers than it was the xenomorphs.
Right. And I liked where it was heading, and I liked the new ideas in it. I'm not a fan of prequels, and if you've seen Star Wars prequels, you could see why. But no. No, but prequels always have the issue of where the story's going to go. And
true.
But with Prometheus, I didn't. But now, because of the complaints about Prometheus, it seems like he took Alien Covenant and then did this extreme course correction back to the Alien timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And back like when I predicted in a previous episode that I feel like Alien Covenant is just a giant apology. That's just what it feels like. It's like, oh, we didn't get to see the Xenos, and we didn't get to see this and this, and it's just like he course corrected. Like, oh, okay, let's bring the Xenos in, and that's.
I did read. I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, but I did read a article with an interview with Ridley Scott where he said, that he'd learned his lesson. He'd listened to the fans, and he realized that fans really wanted to see a lot more of the actual alien, the monster aspect of it. Like he learned that, like essentially, he was saying that was his takeaway from Prometheus. And I just remember reading that, and I actually stopped and read the whole thing over again, just to be sure I heard it right. Because I just kept thinking, really, in the mountain of stuff on the internet about, with people's reactions and, different opinions about Prometheus, that's what you got out of it. I was just really baffled. I was like, that's the last takeaway you should have gotten from that.
Yeah, he basically listened to the trolls on this, and it does. It feels like you were on one journey in Prometheus, and then somebody did a hard left, and you're like, whoa, what just happened.
Mm.
Because you ended the last film with Shaw and David going to find the engineer homeworld and get answers. Now, obviously, I'm still on the fence that where they landed was the actual homeworld of the engineers. I'm actually going to say it's not, but I'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I've heard theories on both sides. I don't, if I remember right, I'm trying to stretch my brain here, but I can't remember anything that actually specifies whether they were or they weren't
they did not specify anything.
Okay.
Paradise was just this world that they discovered on the way, basically. But like David or Shaw rebuilds David,
right?
And Shaw goes into hypersleep, and they arrive on Paradise, and then it shows David just mass murdering everybody.
Yep.
By just dropping the black goo. And speaking of black goo, the spores are the exact same thing of the black goo. They aren't explained. They're just there, and they grow anywhere randomly in caves or on the ground.
Which still doesn't make any sense. Because, because I'm thinking to myself, if these spores are everywhere, I mean, were the spores there when the engineers were there, or are they there only as a result of what David did?
They're results of what David did.
Okay, that's what I thought.
They have to be, because there's no other way that would explain it, because those is what produces, or the spores.
What
the spores produce the backbursters,
right? Which turn create neomorphs. Well, no, neomorphs are sort of. Yeah, sorry. Sort of. Yeah.
It creates like this gray type. Alien type species.
Yeah, those are the neomorphs, right?
But what I had an issue with, so David arrives on the planet, and he arrives in this city.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if this is one of my things, if this is the homeworld of the engineers, why is there only one city on the entire planet, and it's not that big?
Yeah, that seems more like a settlement.
Right. And he drops the goo onto the population, which all seem to just be on the tarmac waiting for the ship.
I do remember that scene and thinking how odd it was. They were just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, it's it's like, oh, hey, Nigel's back with the bread. What? Like, it's like they're all like there welcoming or something. I mean, I don't know. They seem to kind of have angry faces, but then I don't know if they actually realize what was going on. But everybody's in their togas, and then it looks like the civilization has less technology than Prometheus, which again reverts back to, why does everything in Prometheus have better technology than Alien?
Right.
If it's a prequel, but again, I'm gonna start rambling, and so that's besides the point.
Sure.
But it seems I waited so long for the answer of why the engineers wanted to kill the entire human population.
Mm-hmm.
And I just waited so long for the answer, and it is just kind of, nope, we're just going to kill everything off here, and you're not going to get any answers, and then we're going to start a new timeline. And I'm not sure if that's going to get answered in Alien Awakening.
I'm not sure if we're going to get Alien Awakening. The box office was not good for Alien Covenant, and
well, I'm hoping Neil Blomkamp will get his Alien film then, because what made the original Alien series good? They were all different directors.
True.
This just feels like another Ridley Scott film.
Mm. Well, and Neil Blomkamp, though, he has said in interviews recently that it's most likely not going to happen. He's already moved on to District 10. But
and it's depressing.
It is depressing, and I'm still hoping. There's a small part of me that's hanging on to the idea that maybe he'll come back to it after. We'll see.
Oh, I would do anything to see Ripley and Hicks back together again.
Yeah, his concept art and a lot of the stuff that leaked from his pitch was just fantastic.
Yeah, he's a good concept artist.
Yeah,
and but what I feel like what we got was a big middle finger to the audience. I mean, even if Ridley tries to answer it in Alien Awakening or whatever, if it happens,
right?
I mean, you don't build up these questions, then don't answer it in the next film that comes out many years later. I mean, that is a massive middle finger.
Personally, and this is my little rant on Alien Covenant, because the rest of the movie, to me, doesn't really matter. Because there's one moment in the entire movie that is so the entire movie for me boils down to one moment. One moment that makes a choice that I don't really care. The rest of the movie could be awful. The rest of the movie could be great. This one choice was bad enough that I almost walked out of the theater, which was, and again, spoiler alert, the reveal that David actually made the xenomorphs. To me, that was the biggest giant middle finger to the audience that I've ever encountered. Like, that flies so in the face of everything that we've seen in the series, of everything we liked about the series, of all the mysteries we've ever, been curious about. I think it's the stupidest, worst decision from a story perspective that I've encountered in almost any franchise ever. I was absolutely, like, I'm not even mad, because I'm mostly just so shocked and disappointed. Ugh.
I completely agree, and again, we'll get there. I'm not there yet.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna let you get there.
No. I know. Yeah, but no, that's coming. Trust me. And then I have theories about that. And again, like, even after I left the theater and had time to reflect on it and come up with my own theories and ideas of where it could possibly go in the next film. But honestly, I can almost make a bet that I'm making a better film in my head than what we're actually going to get. But again, we'll get to that later. But yeah, like, we didn't get any answers that were raised in Prometheus at all. And that was my biggest frustration with it, because this is definitely not a standalone film. You have to kind of know what xenomorphs are. Say if you've never seen an Alien film before, then you go to see Alien Covenant,
True.
Or even if you just saw Prometheus and then you see Alien Covenant, you'd be like, eggs? What? Facehugger? What? This thing? What? Everything is a what? And
yeah,
you can't, it seems like it
there's definitely some prerequisites here.
The movie completely relies on nostalgia, because I don't, if he was wanting to, if it wasn't running on nostalgia, then he would have called it something else, because he didn't call the first movie anything related to Alien. It was just called Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, they call it Alien. And this is my other complaint with it.
No, I mean, I'll give you I'll give you that one. I do think that there's a lot of moments in this movie that definitely feel very like a wink to the camera kind of moments, where it's very clear that this is like, nostalgia porn, where it's like,
yes.
Ooh, look at this thing. Remember that? Like, that's part of a facehugger. Like, do you remember, like, yeah.
Nostalgia porn. I'm just trying to picture some guy go, oh, fuck yeah, aliens, facehuggers. I'm sure there were people that were that excited for it. And I know I've said it before, but what I feel that what made Alien so successful is the simplicity of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have the basic plot of they go down to a planet to investigate something gets attached to somebody. They didn't, they bring him back aboard, medical attention.
True.
Alien busts out, and it's survive against this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made it scary. You did not know anything about it. The audience didn't know anything about it. You're like, okay, what is this thing? It's an unknown alien. You don't know its origins. You don't know what it's capable of, but it's really good at killing people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what made
it. And you're trapped on the ship with it.
Yeah, it's basically a space slasher,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like trying to explain origins of things like this, that the whole purpose of what was meant to be, what was scary about it was the unknown. It makes everything about it less scary.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the problem, with the Star Wars prequels and a bunch of things like that. Like, I think, if you really want a villain to be iconic and they're mysterious, the mysterious part of the villain is part of what makes them iconic. If you take away that mystery, it's less scary.
And replace it with shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good idea, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I was trying to think of a villain who we haven't had their origin spoiled. Because they've done it to so many now. I mean, like, I understand it's a curiosity. Like, they think, like, oh, here's a mystery. We want to solve that mystery for you. Where did the xenomorphs come from? Like, who really was Darth Vader? Blah, blah, blah. But the problem is they don't seem to understand that mystery is a good thing. And sometimes it's better to not answer the question and leave the audience with questions that they can answer themselves, because it's fun for us. As fans, it's always fun to speculate, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it was this? Wouldn't it be badass if this had happened? It's something that we can answer for ourselves. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, but when you stop and you say, this is the official version, this is what happened, it just takes something away from it.
Yeah, and that's where, like when I was describing earlier, like where I think the next film, if it happens, the next film may go. I'm probably making a better movie in my head, but that was the great thing about the original Alien. Like, you make it up in your head, and each individual person puts their own kind of origin twist or what they think may have happened in their head, depending on what they like, and it makes you it draws you to that more. When you try to explain it, I'm sorry, it's going to suck, because when you try to explain it, it may appeal to certain people, but it's not going to appeal to the rest of them, and the rest of them are always going to outnumber the people that it appealed to.
Well, because again, there's just something that feels like it was taken away from something you loved. Like, if you really loved that character, if you really thought that villain was cool and dark and mysterious, and then you take that aspect away from them, as a fan, you're just left feeling kind of empty. Like, oh, okay, all right. Like Darth Maul. Like, I know they've done stuff in like Clone Wars and things like that with Darth Maul. I don't want to watch it. I genuinely don't. I don't want to know Darth Maul's origins. I don't care. To me, I saw him in one kick-ass fight scene, in the prequels. And say what you will about the prequels, but Darth Maul was the shit. That was awesome. He's scary. He's awesome. He's a cool fighter. He's all of these things. That's all I want to know. I don't want to know if he has daddy issues or what planet he was abandoned on or whatever. None of that matters to me. And if I know it, I'm not going to see him as that badass anymore.
Yeah, you're going to see him as the little bullied, tortured, whiny kid that, was always picked on and just lost his temper, and he had daddy issues that when, you're just going to be like, oh, God, really? Like, you can't just be pure evil.
Yeah, like, it's okay. Like, that's one of the things I thought was so terrible about the attempt to make the Maleficent movie with Angelina Jolie. Maleficent is the coolest villain in Disney history. She's a badass. She's scary. She is so cool. She can turn into a dragon. There's no explanation. Just boom, dragon. Out of all the Disney princess movies, she's the only one that's like legit scary. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting one. Maybe there's another. But
yeah.
I just like
Gaston. He was pretty scary.
I'm just saying, to explain her origin story and to make her a sympathetic character who she's the victim and everything, when she was just such a figment of pure evil. It's just so stupid.
No, and I agree. So let's start with the story. Okay, basically what I liked about Alien is you have one antagonist.
True.
You know who the enemy is. You're the bad guy. Whatever What I feel like happened with Alien Covenant is that there were multiple, I wouldn't necessarily say villains, but I guess just multiple antagonists. But because you first started out with space weather, just all of a sudden happens, and
space weather.
It wrecks the ship. It kills James Franco, which he's in the movie for 2 seconds and then dies.
Can I say that's my favorite part of Alien Covenant? I got nothing.
I like James Franco.
I got nothing personal against James Franco, but I don't see him as that captain of that ship at all. Like, to me, that's just such a horrible miscasting.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And I don't have a problem with James Franco, but it's like, I look at that and I'm like, there's no way he's the captain of that ship. So when he dies in the first few minutes, I'm like, okay. It's almost like them acknowledging that they were like, yeah, our bad.
I think he was in the film because of Danny McBride. It's that would be my only guess. And then Danny McBride's character, his name's Tennessee, and I feel like that was a play on Dallas from Alien, even though it's a state versus a city, but whatever.
Sure.
So, okay, so space weather happens, damages the ship, kills X amount of colonists and the captain.
Right.
and wakes everybody up. They have to repair. It's 7 years left in their journey to this new habitable planet that they're going after. They're hesitant to go back to sleep because obviously with what just happened, they're thinking, I don't want to be awake, or I don't want to be asleep and then, wake up to this again. Because after a traumatic event, you're not going to want to
or just,
go back.
Be afraid that you won't wake up at all.
Part. Right. I totally get that part. Or just even like what happened with James Franco is that he woke up, but and he was inside the pod, but the pod wouldn't open, and then he caught fire and just burned to death in the pod. So watching that, I'm sure you were like, yeah, I don't want that to be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that. And while they're awake, they receive a signal or a transmission from Paradise, the planet we eventually land on, and they receive a John Denver transmission, which is a real sentence.
Yeah, I know.
And okay, so they land a survey crew, and unlike Prometheus, they get off the ship and they have no helmets.
Mm-hmm.
When they got off the ship in Prometheus,
yeah.
they wore helmets. And even if you say the air is breathable, I'm not going to just go outside on a new alien planet with no protection. Like, yeah, I just got my jacket.
Especially because, you have no idea if there's viruses, pathogens, any number of things.
Spores.
Or spores. Or spores. Yeah, it's a really dumb idea.
You know what would solve that? Fucking helmets.
But it's like God, it's like Prometheus all over again, where these scientists can't science. Like these colonists can't go to other planets with common sense. Come on.
I put this film on the same level as Prometheus with different problems. It's like, okay, we want to solve the complaints on Prometheus, but then in solving those, they created a whole new mess of problems. So it did not help at all. And these spores are everywhere, and they are the equivalent of black goo. So instead of goo, we now have dust spores, and they're just kind of brushed over. They're only in that, just that short amount of time.
Right.
That they land in that area.
Which makes you wonder, are they just really unlucky? Did they just land in the wrong spot? Are these spores everywhere?
Well, you really wonder where, Ripley, she's unlucky. I mean, how many films, 4 films into her, those 4 films took place in 2 weeks. That was the worst 2 weeks of her life, probably.
Well, and then her death, and then her rebirth.
But if she kept any of those memories, that's still going to be like tomorrow to her.
Yeah.
The
True.
next memory. And then there's and then you get the scene of the backbursting Xeno, and then David trying to communicate with it, that immediately gets shot by the new captain.
Mm-hmm.
And, David's like, no, I was about to communicate with it. And then he was like, you need to explain yourself now. And David was like, let me show you what I'm talking about.
Oh, God.
Just kind of
I hate that scene so much.
And that's when he goes down to the basement and basically was like, due to science, I made eggs.
What? First of all, why? Why on earth would you follow the creepy android down into his dark, mysterious basement? Did he offer you candy? I mean,
well, he did the stereotypical bad guy lines, I've been successful in my experiments, but I've always been missing one ingredient. And I'm like, oh God, I just knew where this was going. Dude, I would turn around.
No,
and don't follow him into the dark, wet, muddy dungeon. This is stupid. You don't know this.
I know that that's a horror movie trope, but that's a really dumb one. I mean.
This is an android that grows hair.
Come on.
And he has been talking psychobabble crazy the entire time you've been there. And I'm going to follow you into the dark basement.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he gets face hugged.
Yeah.
And then the chest bursting happens pretty much immediately.
Which is weird because, there was a gestation period before.
And it's not even a full-on chest burster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically a full-on alien that that's basically just miniaturized. It's not. It looked like a Xeno, but 6 inches tall. If you bought a toy, it didn't even look like a chest burster.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. I guess maybe because it's not the final. This isn't his final form.
Okay, then you get the David and Walter fight, which is Michael Fassbender fighting himself. And this was after the scene where you got to see Michael Fassbender kiss himself.
I know. Yeah. I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to talk about Michael Fassbender's weird fetish for himself. But yeah, it's awkward.
And then, okay, so after that, the crew finally escapes the planet. And then once they escape, it basically turns into the Cliff Notes of Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just a very quick remake of Alien.
Quick, short version of it.
And I was surprised, too, because, this is where we get the shower scene. The shower scene shows no nudity, but it is still gratuitous because they had the shower scene just for the shot to where they could get the girl screaming while covered in blood in the shower. I think that was and none of Alien Covenant is scary because every single death you see coming a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you even see the alien, like, approaching, like, coming in the shower, like, in the shadows, and then you see the tail come out. Like, nothing is quick and, like, oh my God, shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely do not agree with, it brings the horror back to the franchise. No, it doesn't. Fuck you.
It brings the gore back to the franchise. It doesn't bring the horror. Because some of that there's a lot of gore in certain parts and in certain deaths, but it's not scary. Like you said, the suspense isn't there. I mean, like in the shower scene, the alien's there, so it kind of ruins the suspense. Yeah, there's dramatic irony, like the audience knows something the main character doesn't, but to be scary, you need more than that. Especially, it's not very scary when you just keep thinking to yourself, well, that person's dead. Like, especially if you could see it, like, way, way early. Like, right, here, follow me down into my creepy basement.
Well, it's no different from reading a title on YouTube and saying death scene in basement and clicking on it. You know what's coming because it's that obvious. Yeah. It's like they may as well spelled it out for you and saying, here it comes. Now, okay. Now, in regards to the quote-unquote twist ending of where David kills Walter and cuts his hair and cuts his face to mimic Walter's injuries. Now,
speaking of something that was telegraphed and really, really was easy to see coming.
Here is where... Well, no, because I didn't see this coming, and I'll tell you why here. But this is what I'm getting into right here. But
to me, it seems staggeringly obvious that he was going to replace the other one.
Okay, but nope. This is where it gets interesting. Now, David and Walter were fighting away from the crew. The crew never knew they were going to start fighting. Mm-hmm. The crew never knew that they actually killed each other. I mean, the crew eventually knew that David was bad.
Yeah.
However, like, David, after killing Walter, you assume that you see them fighting first off, and then it cuts away. So you don't actually technically see who won at the time.
Right.
And then you just see who you think is Walter running toward the ship. Now, Walter did not have cuts on his face before the fight scene.
Right.
The crew would not know that he has cuts on his face. Yet David puts cuts on his face to replicate what Walter looked like. So the only reason he cut his face was for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And that's why I didn't see it coming. Because I was like, well, why would he cut his face if nobody knew that he was in that fight? And, nobody witnessed that fight.
Mm.
Other than that, if that didn't happen, I'd have been like, oh, like if he just cut his hair and, and Walter like walked in the room, like, I need to talk to you about something. And then it just cut away to him like running. Then I could probably have put it together that that's what happened. But that's why I didn't put it together, because I think that I honestly, that's the only conclusion I can come up with, is that he cut his face for the audience, not for the crew. And so it felt like a weird fourth wall break that I was just not a fan of.
I kind of chalked that one up to just a mistake. They're showing the audience something to be like, see, this is how to convince someone of this. And then you can step back and be like, well, wait, they didn't know about that. But, a lot of times that's just a continuity mistake. It's just someone not paying close enough attention to the script or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't think it through that thoroughly. So to me, it was just like, oh yeah, he's obviously going to he's going to pretend to be the other android.
And then as far as him creating the facehuggers, I really don't understand how he knew that what he was creating was going to create a facehugger. Then that facehugger he knew that had to attach to a host, because he said I'm missing one ingredient, and that would spawn. I just don't understand how he figured that out.
How did he do any of this? I mean, like, you're just kind of... This is the equivalent of just treating magic like science like magic. This is just like saying he did science, and now he's got a xenomorph. And it's like, but no, like Prometheus brought up so many questions about what is the black goo? What does it make? Because if you follow Prometheus, it doesn't make a lick of sense, because the black goo just mutates things. But it also was the thing that seeded life on Earth, and
it's called the accelerant. It's supposed to accelerate like development and even like decay. Because the way I take it is when the engineer drank the black goo at the beginning of Prometheus, it accelerated his death. Mm-hmm. But in his death, he dissolved into the water streams, and then his
DNA mixed in
regeneration, and then so calling it the accelerant, that's how I took it. And like,
see, but they don't call it the accelerant though. Like, they don't say that in Prometheus. You know, that would have helped.
But what I don't understand is in Prometheus, I could have sworn there were, and maybe I should have watched Prometheus recently again, but that there were almost like cave, not drawings, but or carvings that already looked like the xenomorph already existed.
There was a relief. There was a big like a wall relief,
and it looked like a crucified like wall relief, like with the arms out to the side.
And it was very clearly a xenomorph. And it actually showed, if I remember right, the picture's online, you can find it, but I think it actually showed like part of the alien life cycle. Like, I think it actually showed a face hugger and like an egg and some of that stuff as well. A lot of people have pointed that out, and rightfully so, because that doesn't make any sense. But then again, none of Prometheus does.
This is where I was willing to I was like, okay, Prometheus introduced some new ideas, and I was hoping that those ideas would be fleshed out eventually, because like, oh, these are good ideas, but they didn't make sense into the alien universe, which was my big complaint about it. And we won't talk about the script and other issues it has, but I really did enjoy the ideas that it brought up.
Yeah, and
I like that it wasn't a direct prequel, because direct prequels, you know exactly where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know more about the engineers. I don't want to care how it led to Alien, because I don't want to know the origin. That's right. Just, for horror, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, whatsoever. I think where Prometheus was going, the idea of introducing us to the engineers and the what and why of them, that to me, I agree, was more fascinating to me than going back and rehashing the aliens. I just kind of wanted to see how the aliens were involved with that. Like, maybe the aliens already, like, to me, I thought where they were going with it. And this is just my, spec script, I guess, idea, is that when we had the sequel to Prometheus, when Shaw starts investigating other engineer worlds, she actually finds out that they were wiped out by the aliens. Like, some might still exist, but most of them were wiped out by the aliens. And that you kind of do this whole thing where basically, like, they used to be this vast, highly advanced civilization. And then the xenomorph showed up somewhere along the line and wiped most of them out. And, then you kind of have it as like a cautionary tale for humans. And, like, you could kind of do some interesting things with that. Because then, you still have aliens involved. You can still show stuff. You can still do all the alien things. But it's about the engineers. It's about that other history. And all that would have been a much more interesting story. I don't understand this weird fascination with David. Like, I feel like Ridley Scott and Michael Fassbender just got to be bros, like, super quick. And they were just like, oh my God, these are great ideas. It's like you could almost hear them like getting high together or something and just being like, what if David was like Lawrence of Arabia?
What if I got to make out with myself during the movie?
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the way it kind of feels when you like think about it, when you say stuff out loud?
Yeah, they just get stoned together, and that's how they come up with their ideas. Yeah.
Well, because the thing is they keep bringing in these, because obviously one of the big things with the Alien franchise is that, like Ripley's the main character. They have a woman protagonist for all 4 films, and even Alien versus Predator. But I feel like in these 2 films, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, that she's not really the main character. Like, Shaw isn't really the main character. David is. You know what I mean? It's like, and then they got this new girl, and I can't remember her name. I'm just going to call her Reboot Ripley.
Daniels.
Daniels. See, that's the point. Like, I was already that uninvested in the movie that I just couldn't even remember their names. I'm just gonna call her Reboot Ripley, because to me, that was really what they were trying to do with her anyway. You know, she's very clearly like supposed to be like another Ripley. But both of them, you know, it's like you feel like you as an audience member are being told they're the main character. You know, they're on promotional artwork, they're featured in a lot of things, they just get a lot of screen time, but they don't really feel like the main character. Like they're not really the focus of what the story's about. Does that make sense?
No, totally.
And like, I'm not saying that in any way to talk about like the politics of you know, diversity or whatever for filmmaking or anything like that. Like that's not my point at all. My point is, if you're going to have a main character, they should be the main character.
Yep.
And David, while he could be an interesting villain, which I think is what they were kind of trying to do, the film focuses so much on him that he ends up becoming the focal point. So...
Well, no, I really think that he was the focal point, especially that they had Walter, and Walter is basically another David.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
there's two of
he
him.
He gets double
basically.
Screen time, and I don't know if you're ready to talk about it yet, but to me, I won't be able to get over the whole David created the xenomorph. That...
Okay, yeah, this part, okay. And here is where I'm saying of where that I may think that, or the next Alien film will go. But I'll reiterate again, I am probably making a better movie in my head than what we would actually get if we got anything. I remember David saying, to make an omelet, you must, break a few eggs or whatever. And I was like, oh, is he referring to eggs? Is like, I didn't know what he meant by that. But anyway, like
eggs, aliens get it.
Right. I took it as a weird pun. I was like, are they trying to make a pun in some way? Like whatever.
I think they were just trying to reference a cliche, but sure.
Okay. So I'm not 100% convinced that David killed Shaw.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is okay, and this is where I'm probably making a better movie in my head. But if you watched what was not in the film, like there's like that kind of 5 to 10 minute prerequisite or whatever prequel short film to where David is wandering the ship and saying like, Shaw put me back together. She helped me, and I, after she went to sleep, I learned her ways, everything. But if you watch when he is putting her into cryo sleep,
mm-hmm.
she looks deathly sick. And what I'm wondering is if the botched operation where they pulled the trilobite, the squid thing out of her in Prometheus, I'm wondering if she got like some infection from that, and that he really truly did love her, like as he told Walter, like, I loved her. And so I'm wondering if he really did truly have feelings for her.
Mm-hmm.
And when she died, because if you remember in Prometheus, she was very religious. And this is where I'm wondering if they're going to do the whole Jesus was an engineer thing. But on top of that, like, she also wanted kids, but she couldn't have kids.
Right.
So I'm wondering,
especially not after
he is
Prometheus.
using, and I'm wondering if he's using her DNA on top of with the black goo to create the eggs in a weird way, so that she technically has children, and that she may end up being what spawns the alien queen. But this is like in my head again. This is where I'm like probably making a better movie in my head, that she ends up being.
Oh, you're saying that basically her DNA is going to be used to make the prototype alien queen.
Well, it's a possibility. And it's just me in my head with thinking of how she wanted to be a mother, and he may have really loved her, and he could be, because his drawings that he had of her basically what looked like her dissection in Alien Covenant. And I'm wondering if he's using her DNA plus whatever he's been experimenting on, because even when you saw the Xeno, it looked like it was kind of an insect, like it bent weird. And so I'm wondering if this is going to be just, it's a little bit closer to a Xeno, but it's not exactly the one that we know. And then I'm wondering if, like we were talking about earlier, if this planet is a settlement and he flew there to perfect his weapon before flying to the actual home planet that he knows where it is. Again, I could be making this in my head, and it could be a completely different movie, what we actually get, if we actually get it.
Okay.
But this is where I started thinking about, okay, well, maybe he's trying to do this setup again, but I thought that about Prometheus, and we got Alien Covenant. So So it could have just equally be, oh, the real Xenos came from a contaminated Pez dispenser. Because considering of what else we got, I would not be surprised if that's where he ends up going with it.
Okay, I gotta say, that is the most elaborate, well thought out attempt to try to make that work. That's actually really impressive. That I probably will ever hear.
It's the only way I could think to make it work, and like I said, I'm probably making a better movie in my head.
I wish
this is probably not what we're gonna get.
I wish I wish I could like sit back and tell myself, yeah, that's totally what they meant. I would love to be able to do that. That is definitely not the case. I definitely think they had no idea what they were doing.
Oh, sure, they're probably making this shit up as they go.
Yeah, him and Fassbender, getting loaded. Hey, what if I made a face hugger?
Yeah, right. They're getting stoned together. That'd be a good skit. We should do that skit together. Like, I can play Ridley Scott, you can play Michael Fassbender. We'll just pretend like we get stoned on a couch, and then we'll talk about aliens, and that'll be, like the one guy. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. But okay, so these take place before Alien. Here's another big complaint of mine. So David and everybody can talk to the ship like it's a fucking Amazon Echo.
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, in Alien, he's got to go into the DOS room and type to the mother to get answers in DOS. Like do they have budget cuts? I just didn't. That part was just like, oh my god, really? Like, come on, go retro with it. Do what Alien Isolation did. Like, try to make it look 70s, but in space.
The only thing I would say that might justify that is, to be fair, Ripley, the ship, the Nostromo in Alien was basically a giant cargo hauler. Like, it's definitely not any kind of state-of-the-art ship by any means. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. You're totally right. I mean, it's ridiculous that they would have regressed that far.
Yeah, to a supercomputer, like the super brain of the ship. Like, I get it, like that these are space truckers and they have a semi. They don't have a Tesla. Mm-hmm. It's a different type of ship. So I totally get that part. But yeah, like you would think that they could at least put some speakers in there and a microphone. But that's beside the point. Let's get off. Let's get off of the negativity. I feel like this is like the negative podcast.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've had my venting feel.
And and I feel bad. I don't want to. I don't want to seem like I'm negative or I don't like a lot of these things. Because the truth is, I completely geek out and I go nuts for the things I love. I really do. It's just I like to hold things to a high standard. I'm gonna be honest. Like that's just the way I view a movie. Is I'm holding everything to the standard where I'm like, this is how good this movie could have been. So,
well, this is how this movie should have been.
Exactly.
It's really what you should say, because the fact that you're saying, well, I would hold it to a high standard. Exactly. What the fuck are these people doing? I'm like, oh, we're going to hold it to a medium standard to low. Like, I mean,
just because, your fans deserve that. They've been on they've been along with you on this whole trip. They're the ones that are paying for all these, with the movie ticket sales and everything. So it's just, come on, be respectful.
I'm honestly surprised he didn't try to make it PG-13 and to appeal to all audiences.
I agree.
And but I'm just totally surprised.
But speaking of movies I'm going to gush about, let's move on to Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah, let's move on to a good sequel.
And this was a very good sequel.
I'm going to say better than the first, because
I don't know if I can quite go that far. It's close.
No, I am.
It's close.
And here's why. No, here's why. I'm going to say better than the first because, okay, first off, we got it's still written and directed by James Gunn. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it's written and directed by one person, not a committee of 19 fucking people. What an insane idea. I like characters, and the sequel is very character driven.
Yeah.
More than the first. Every single person basically had something to do. Mm-hmm. Everybody had an arc.
I love the fact that this was a far more character-centric movie. The first movie is definitely more plot driven. It still has great characters, but it's definitely more plot driven. This one feels like a really good balance of being much more character driven, with less plot, but it still felt like it worked.
Oh no, it so did, and I will buy this on Blu-ray. Unlike Alien Covenant, which I will probably rent one more time just to just to confirm that I hate it. Well, not really. Hate's a strong word. I don't hate it. I was bored by it, but no, Guardians. I liked it because it was a good sequel. It built upon the first one, and it answered questions that we had from the first movie. Oh my god! Yeah, Ridley, take notes.
Wait, you mean you're saying a sequel did something we actually want a sequel to do? Like, we get to spend more time with characters we like, learn more about them, and have fun with them again?
I know. Isn't that a crazy fucking idea? Oh my god, that's revolutionary. We should patent that.
I love so much how it opens, like I really, really dug the fact that, they set up your generic action opening, where it's like, this is the hook, was so popular in modern movies where it's like the first 5 to 10 minutes is going to be this action sequence, and then we're really going to settle in. And they really make it seem like that's what they're gearing up for. And then as soon as the battle starts, the music kicks in. And spoiler alert, just again. But like, I adore the fact that, Baby Groot just starts dancing and all this chaos just keeps going on around him. Like, just from that one scene, I was like, okay, I already feel a million times better that this is going to work.
Right. And I enjoy that part too, because I find that almost the same as the first one. Like when he starts dancing to Redbone.
Oh yeah.
You get that intro that just kind of sets the tone, because you first get this kind of dark intro in the first one of him losing his mom, and then like, because at first I'm like, oh god, this is so depressing. And then it just cuts into him with like putting his Walkman on, like all serious, and then hitting play, and it's just
kind of
it sets the tone for the movie.
Oh, it
like,
does.
Okay, like this is, and we had to do this thing at the beginning to get you on his side, but we promise for the rest of the movie you're gonna have a good time.
Right.
So enjoy it. And I feel like that's kind of where the second one started, was with, okay, you're gonna have a good time.
And what's hilarious is they released that little clip that showed James Gunn giving the dancing reference for Baby Groot, which is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Baby Groot intro at the beginning, and I like the fact that they're kind of mercenaries at the beginning. It's just like their whole team together, and they really turned Drax up on this one.
They did
to be more comedic.
I feel like I kind of would have wanted a little less Drax. I mean, I'm totally nitpicking. I just thought that they gave him just a little too much screen time, and it was wearing a little thin. But again, it's like I can't even complain, because everything else is so good. All the other characters shine so well. And I was actually really happy about the fact that, because a lot of people complained in the trailer that it gave away that Kurt Russell is Dad. They were all like, oh god, spoiler. But then you watch the movie and it's like, oh good lord, you find out like less than 10 minutes into the movie. It's not
much of a spoiler.
It's not even a spoiler. Like,
right, yeah.
Like,
it's more like an announcement, less than a spoiler. It's and my only complaint with the movie, and again, just what almost seems to be a theme, just like with Alien Covenant, I was about 3 beers in, and the story splits, and you have to follow 2 different like kind of storylines, because the group splits up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I would have personally preferred something more linear, but I also recognize at the same time it's just a preference of mine. It's not really a negative factor in the film. I mean, it's nice to see a single competent writer write a cohesive story, because honestly, you can't. And I understand the need to split the story, because
I was actually okay with that.
You give right, and this is what I'm getting into. So in doing so, you give every single character something to do, and it would be harder to squeeze all of those character arcs into the same scene if they're all together. Mm. Like, it's hard to give everybody something to do in one scene, because there is a lot of characters here. So splitting them up gave them room to do their own like character stories, character arcs, and then they meet at the end, toward the end.
No, I thought it was perfect, actually. The main reason is because I think what they ended up doing with Rocket and Yondu, I think was like the big point of it. that to me seemed like the whole point of splitting them up was so that Star-Lord could have his kind of stuff with his dad and everybody could, be there. But because of what they'd done with Rocket at the beginning of the movie, and where they were going with Yondo's character, I think it makes perfect sense to pair them up and kind of have them sort of help each other through some stuff.
Oh, it made perfect sense.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And when I say it, this is just a personal preference of mine. It was just like, okay, I'm 3 beers in. I have to follow 2 different stories and then remember these details. And so 3 beers in, I might as well just call this episode 3 beers in. But like,
okay, just maybe it's just a general help for you in the future. Maybe just stick to 2 beers and just space it out a little bit.
They were going to split the story. Okay. This was just like
you're having a hard time
when they started when they split. Okay, so when they split the story, this is me like going, oh shit! All right, so I got to really pay attention. Like you could see my eyes just opening a little bit wider. Like okay, you have to really concentrate. Like opening my eyes wider is going to really fix that. And I was really concentrating on it, and I got it. And it wasn't that hard. It was just like I just felt like it kind of was the bouncing back and forth because there were some times that the bouncing was a little much for me at the time, but I mean, it wasn't bad. It even if I was sober, I would be like, whatever. But it's like kind of a minor. It's like getting a B+ on something. It's like, well, it's not bad. It's just maybe I would have tried to tie it cohesively more together. But at the same time, I have no answer for that on how to do it because I'm not a writer.
Right.
I'm just a watcher at this point. But and that was probably my only. No, I take that back. I didn't quite understand why Ego just put it out there that put a tumor in your mom. I'm like, dude, that's not a line you just casually drop. Like I don't care that you're some all-knowing deity of some kind. You don't just go, I felt bad that I had to put a tumor in her brain. I'm like, probably no, you didn't. But I mean, whatever.
I don't know. The only thing
that's not a casual line you drop.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you made the point already. He is kind of like an all-powerful being. He kind of feels like he's above it. And I took that scene more as he had reached the point where he was so confident that he had Star-Lord under his control and that his plan had worked. That now he could just speak his mind. I mean, that's the way I interpreted that scene, was that, like he basically was so confident that now he was just like, oh, so nice. I don't have to have the facade anymore. I can just be honest. And
yeah. He just got a little too cocky.
A little cocky, yeah. Like, my only thing was, I mean, like I said, I'm minor nitpicks, but my only real nitpick was just, they spent so much time with Drax and Mantis that I wasn't really sure where they were going with that. It just felt like a lot of time was spent on them. And it's hilarious. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was expecting them to like get together or something. And for a while they were kind of
what I was about to say.
They were hinting at it because, like, there's that whole scene where she wakes him up and he's like talking about the possibility of being with her physically, was trying to make him vomit everything. But I don't know if that's just a deleted scene or what. Yeah, I mean, that's a minor complaint. It really is. I mean, so much of that movie is so hilarious and so well done. And, all the parts of Groot are great. Yondo is amazing. I mean, what they ended up doing and where they went with Yondo's character was phenomenal.
Yeah, at the end of the first movie, I wouldn't have expected that Yondu, Michael Rooker's character, would have had that much
impact
of a. Well, he wouldn't be this strong of a character
no kidding.
In the second one. I'm like, and the whole story of the second Guardians of the Galaxy, and I felt this with almost every. I say almost every, probably some of the two main character arcs. Like it's one of those stories of what you've been looking for has been right in front of you the whole time, because you have. Quill searching for a family or a father figure, and then you find out, oh, I had it all along in Yondu, and same with Gamora, the whole unspoken thing, like, oh, what I've been looking for is right in front of me. But I did like the reference of when he was talking, I think it was a Cheers reference, but he was like, oh, the ratings will go down once they get together.
He actually references Sam and Diane. Yeah. No, I think that was kind of a big thing with the whole movie, though, because like that's really a common theme, through the whole thing. Because Star-Lord with his dad and Yondu and Gamora and him, and also Gamora's sister. The idea that like we could have been good sisters. We didn't have to fight each other.
Yep.
I thought all that was great. I really liked the bonding thing with Yondu and Rocket, and how like he points out to him, he's like, "Look, you and I are essentially the same person." I thought
they are.
I thought that was great. Because I think Rocket's character, the nature of his character, is such that he's not going to be one of those people that's just like, "Oh man, you're right." Like he's going to be stubborn. He's going to run away from the truth. He's not going to want to hear it. And the only person he's really going to respect hearing that from is someone who really gets him. And is so well done. It's so good. And I mean, my favorite part of the whole movie by far is the scene they actually showed in the trailer where it's the bomb and he's giving him instructions on the bomb. And then he asks for tape to put over the button.
Not one of you has tape.
I just love that it never leaves that little cave, that he asks Star-Lord for tape, and then it just kind of sits on him and Groot while you just hear all this chaos going on and everybody talking about tape. I love that. I love that James Gunn has the confidence to say, no, we're not going to show you the big spectacle. We're just going to sit right here with Rocket and wait for tape. It is really rare for me that I ever end up really enjoying something that I saw in the trailer in the movie. Because by the point I see it in the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the thing from the trailer. Like, it's like I'm burnt out on the trailer bit by the time I see the movie.
Sure.
So for this to actually still have something that surprised me and made me laugh that hard, like from a trailer scene, is amazing. I mean, hats off. That is fantastic.
I like a lot of what James Gunn has done as a writer, and he actually was he wrote the screenplay for the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake, actually, that Zack Snyder's first film. So I like James Gunn as a writer. I think he does. He can take something like, and this is what made me kind of a fan of him early on, was when he did Dawn of the Dead, and I'm like, how? Because I hate remakes for the most part, but he both him and Zack Snyder somehow did a good job on that, and I feel weird saying Zack Snyder did a good job. Like, that's the only Zack Snyder film I actually own. I'm not a fan of 300 or anything like that, but no, I'm really impressed with and I really liked the Gold People. That was one of my favorite aspects of this movie. I mean, they're supposedly this engineered society to be perfect, and that they're so precious. They value their lives so much that that they don't even want to put themselves in danger, but they are very, very childlike. To a point to like their army, like it's not even real people. It's like basically an arcade.
It's just a game.
Yeah, it's like an arcade, and they all treat it like an arcade. They all stand behind each other, like, the guy going, "Oh, you suck." Like it's very childlike, and everything is supposed to be perfect. And even when they're rolling out that little red carpet and the gold cylinder, like it jams at one point, and the look of frustration, like everything's supposed to be so perfect with them. But I love the.
Which I like the fact that that's actually the reason that that Rocket kind of wants to just take it,
the batteries.
Like he took the batteries just because they pissed him off. Like he's just like, you're like, no, screw you.
And he's like, oh shit, I'm winking with my left eye.
Like that was great.
Paying attention to the smaller characters, like even Taserface, like that was a great. Just a great little bit of even when he was like, I want him to know who did it, tell him it was Taserface, and that gold person was just like like nobody took his name seriously. The whole thing with Groot getting the fin, like, that was pretty good. There's so many good moments in that whole movie. I don't know, it's the only thing I could say is I don't know, I mean, like I said, I really don't even have any criticisms really. So, okay, I mean, maybe you can answer this.
They're all just like minor nitpicks more than anything. Like,
well, sure, and maybe you can answer this this for me a little bit. So, being Quill is an offspring or a hybrid, I guess, between whatever his dad was and human, right? So, I'm assuming his immortality is linked as long as his dad is alive. This is where I didn't quite get it. And maybe this is a whole thing that people bitched about in the first Guardians, where they were like, well, how does he have a tape player on his space? And maybe, even to that, I was like, oh, shut up, whatever. But I'm just thinking of,
I never really, that never bothered me, because I kept thinking in all the years he was out there, he couldn't find one person to, make one for him. Or he has a tape. He has like the portable one. He could clearly show someone how to make this.
Or return to Earth and get one. Or the fact that he couldn't just build one because they have spaceships. Or he could have gotten,
or as they've clearly shown, it's not like they don't have things from Earth. He could have just got it like for sale at some trade store or something,
Yeah, I mean,
like he could have got it from a marketplace. They could have had like, here's some things from this other planet.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of explanations for that. I always thought that was like really nitpicky.
Right, and what I'm saying is this didn't bother me. Like that part of it didn't bother. So I feel like maybe this question or complaint might be on that same level. But if he is half of his his father's DNA, so he's a hybrid, but his immortality is somehow is linked to his dad. So once his dad is destroyed, he's just like everybody else. So that was my only part. That I'm like, well, why is, even if he's an offspring of him, he didn't just pass his powers down, he's still linked to him. So once he destroys his dad, he's just normal, and then there's nothing special about him. That part was, I was just kind of questioning, but I didn't feel offended by it, or I was just like, well, maybe I'm just overthinking this, like people did with the tape deck on his spaceship in the first one.
I don't know. I mean, like they don't really specify, but I don't really think it matters.
Right. That's when I said that it probably doesn't matter, and I shouldn't care this much. But it was just a question that my brain brought up to my, you think of questions in your head, you can't help it, and they just pop in. I'm like, well, okay. I can't really explain that, but I didn't care either at the same time. When my brain asked me that question, I was just like, well, that's not the point, really. Like I
think that's something they'll probably cover at some point, probably in the next installment, whether that's Guardians 3 or Infinity War or whatever. But okay, all right. I just thought of something, and now I want to take back my favorite moment.
Okay.
Because while that's still my favorite moment of the film proper, I gotta give it up to a scene I totally forgot about until just now, which is the teenage Groot scene after the credits. Oh my god. I was laughing so hard I was almost crying. That just that one little scene with teenage Groot and Star-Lord arguing was just it was perfect.
Sure. Like here, okay, that is another complaint of mine, is the 15 after credit or post credit scenes, or however many there were. I left.
I think there was like 3 or 4 maybe.
I left. As soon as the credits started, I was like, I'm gone. I don't, whatever. I hate after credit scenes. I don't care how good they are.
Really?
I hate after credit scenes.
Why? It's odd.
I just don't like sitting there waiting for this little 3-second scene to happen. Like, just show me. And if you're going to do it, don't do it. Don't make me wait till the entire thing.
Well, this was nice because they were dispersed throughout the credits.
Sure,
like you get 2 or 3 minutes of credits, and then here's another one, and then
sure, and it makes you sit through the whole credits. I get that, and maybe it's me being selfish with my time, but I'm just like, I got up and I was just like, I don't feel like staying here, like for all these like post after scenes that aren't really going to add much to the story. I mean, I'm obviously going to buy the film when it releases, and I'll watch them then. And I'm just not a big fan of staying in the theater in that seat just to watch the after credits, especially because a lot of times by the end, especially as I said, I'm 3 beers in, I had to pee. And if I'm going to miss 1 or 2 scenes, I might as well just miss them all and catch it later. And I'm just not a fan of the after credit, but that's what Marvel's known for. So I know they're going to do that. But I'm not complaining on them, and it's a personal preference. I'm not gonna dog them for it or say that I count that as a negative. It's just, for me, I don't personally like it, and for some reason I like outtakes sometimes, as long as they do good outtakes, as long as it's not just some guy repeating his lines 15 times over, which I have seen. It's just some guy like reading his lines over and over. Like, this is not funny. Why are you including this in the scenes, like in your little post credit scenes? I was like, this makes me want to leave even faster.
That usually just means they didn't actually have enough outtakes.
Right. But then at that point, just do the credits. Like, don't put them in the credits. I remember I didn't watch the first one until I got it on Blu-ray, and it was the Howard the Duck scene, which Howard the Duck does do a cameo in this one for like a half second or a couple seconds or whatever. But and maybe this is me, because I know the original, the 80s Howard the Duck was not particularly good, but I was still hoping that they would just...
That is a very kind way of saying that.
But I was just still hoping they would use the same costume, like in the background. Oh God, it would have been awesome.
No way. No, I disagree with you on that one. I much prefer the way it is.
Well, I guess
greatly.
It fits better into the scene, but I'm thinking just for like,
for nostalgia's sake,
yeah, comedy's sakes. Like, oh my God, where all these costumes look really good, and then there's the really shitty Howard the Duck. Like, I felt that would have been like almost like a satirical, like, oh look, there's the shitty Howard the Duck. Like in the middle of all the awesome stuff, like this is what you used to have. I just felt that would have been like a funny callback, but
I just want to burn that memory completely. I just want to forget I ever watched that movie.
It was a weirdly disturbing movie.
It's a disturbing movie.
It is very disturbing. The main villain guy, he's the dude from like, yeah, he's been in like everything from Beetlejuice to Ferris Bueller. I think he was the main. I forget his name, but he hasn't been in anything in a while, I don't think. But yeah, no, I just remember being in that movie. I was like, this is so weird. Like, I can't even describe it other than, what am I watching? She offered him milk in a bowl, but he was like, "Nah, I'll take a beer." And it's like, so a duck is drinking beer. This is the beer drinking duck scene. Okay.
It gets way, way worse than that.
Well, sure.
I mean,
but this is where it started.
I mean, the duck tries to hook up with her. Like,
yeah,
that was actually a scene.
Oh yeah.
In there.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. This is where it started, and from there you were just like, oh, that's kind of weird, and that's where it started, and then it just kind of like branched out from there, going, oh yeah, she's gonna try to fuck a duck, and then
yeah, let's just move on from Howard the Duck.
Well, it seems kind of an odd note, coming from Alien Covenant, going on to a high of Guardians, and then coming... I'm sorry I brought it back down to Howard the Duck. This is not meant to be the Howard the Duck podcast.
No, you just brought it to a weird place.
Hey, well, that's Howard the Duck for you.
That's Howard the Duck.
I'll bring it to a weird place. But anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. But until next time, episode 7, this is Ben.
And this is Derek.
We'll see you next time.